Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. So I typically post around 2 videos that are stories that you guys have sent me each week. This week I'm technically posting 3, but the one that I'm sharing today is just one person's story, but it was kind of on the longer side, so I just wanted to give it one video. So a reminder, if you guys have a lot of stories to send me, just one person has a lot of stories, please send them. I will give it its own video. It's fine, I will still read it. And if you have any stories you'd like for me to read, please check out all the information below and just put YouTube in the subject line when you send it to that email that's below. I have that linked below, my Patreon information below, and all my other socials, so please check those out. But get cozy, grab a snack, grab a fun little drink, and let's listen to this story. So they started this email with "Hey Morgan and Eric," and that is the cutest thing ever. Eric's my husband, in case you guys don't know, but sometimes he's on here and telling stuff, so that's cute. He's gonna be really happy that was in there. I'm from Appalachia, and you remind me of my people from back home, which is very welcoming. Keep doing you. Yay. You can call me Winter, and here's a little background before we dive into my strange encounters. I used to live in the Georgia mountains along with my large family. We moved into a newly built home when I was 5 years old with woods and hills surrounding. The woods behind us were home to old remnants of homesteads and native rock mounds by a dried up creek bed. At the time, we didn't know it was home to a sinister being, but over the years we learned a lot. Too much even. The first story. I remember my first time walking through the woods, going down an old trail to find an old chimney with no remains left of a building. When the group of us made it there, we decided to split up. The ones who wanted to stay there and the others who wanted to keep looking around. I went along with some of my older siblings to explore. We went up the mountain for about 5 minutes when we came across an abandoned vintage blue truck that had boxwood growing out of its hood and tires scattered amongst the brush. We found it cool at the time, so we went back to the others and brought them to where the truck was, only to find that the truck was gone. The same spot where we looked and touched the steering wheel. The boxwood was there, the surrounding trees where we had pushed through the dew-covered mountain grass and ferns. It was gone, but it doesn't end there. Many years later, I think I was 12, we were walking through the woods and we came across an old truck once again, the same old truck, but only pieces of it remained, and all the tires in the same placements as we previously remembered. At this time, we'd already mapped out the whole woods for years and knew every inch of this place. That truck did not exist for a span of 7 or so years. Till this day, we can't explain, except that Appalachia has much more going on than what meets the eye. That's like a timeline glitch or something. I have thoughts, but I'm going to keep reading. Second story. During the years we lived at our childhood home, we witnessed many beings which had given names to, specifically ones we encountered. My 2 sisters had made a shade garden out in the woods behind the barn area. We had been living in that house for around 2 years when we came across what we called Wagon Boy. We were sitting in the shade garden when we heard squeaky wheels, as if someone was pulling one of those radio flyers with rusty wheels. We jumped up and looked around, but saw no one. A minute later, the wagon wheels had stopped, and suddenly a crow flew from behind a nearby tree, in the direction that we had heard that noise. We were frightened that day, but it didn't stop us from going out again. Weeks later, we were back out into the woods. We loved being in those woods, and we heard Wagon Boy once again, but at this time we saw the glimpse of a small black-haired boy dart behind a tree, as the wagon wheel stopped, and then a crow flew away from that exact tree. There were many other occurrences where I wasn't present, but my siblings were. The third story. Since the barn was built, there had been sightings of a light in the loft. The front of the barn had a window facing the house. That window was located in the loft. Often we would look out from the house after dark and notice a dim flickering light that would move around, as if someone had a candle. My dad would go out and check the loft but would find no one. There had been a couple times where my sisters claimed to have seen a lady in a white nightgown and sleeping bonnet in the window of the barn. The barn lady, she came to be. We often pretended she was waiting for her long-lost lover, teasing my brothers that one of them could be him. When I had gotten older, I was in my teen years, I noticed the light in the barn yet again and wanted to see for myself if there was really someone up there. One of my brothers and I had gotten to the barn gate, which was 50 feet from the barn itself, and the light could still be seen illuminating the wood walls of the loft. There was only one way up there, through the loft hole in the middle of the barn. We saw no one come down, and we didn't hear anything above. We went up and looked around, and no one was there. Even to the year we left the place, the barn lady would make an appearance. Fourth story. Yet another wood story. Some of us had gone hiking to the mounds, and we had gotten to the old riverbed when we noticed one of the rock mounds had been disturbed and a hole had been dug. This kind of freaked us out, so we looked all around, and then something large and white darted through the trees. It could be no shorter than 7 feet. We took off running, and whatever it was went running after us. I remember a large thudding and crunching of leaves, the kind of sound of something large running. I looked back behind us several times as we ran about a mile to the tree line. The stomping stopped as soon as we crossed the tree line. We were terrified. I don't know what down, but I have speculation. The white Bigfoot, we called it, and 3 of the older ones had run into it again a couple years later. They were in the back of our woods when they saw the white thing dart across the mountain towards them. Without hesitation, they took off back to the house, and yet again it stopped chasing them once they crossed that tree line. I fear what would have happened if they hadn't ran fast enough. 5th story. This is the last one for now. I have many, many more encounters, and they get darker from here. Anyways, this story takes place during the time when my house was being built. I wasn't present for this, so this story is for my mom. The workers who were contracted to build the house would leave their tools in the house at night and would often come back the next day and find their tools scattered all over the house, from the basement all the way to the attic, with no explanation as to why. Each day, they would clean up the tools and put them all in one room. Sometimes they would find them placed on top of the cabinets, door frames, and even the exposed beams in the attic where there was no floor near. Everyone who worked on it would say a haunted house is supposed to be old. This foreshadows the next 16 years of paranormal experiences that I would love to tell you about another day. Thanks for reading these stories from my life. You'll hear from me again. I hope you'll be able to understand my ramblings, and thank you for giving a light to people's personal stories that would otherwise never see the light of day. Stay safe and sleep well. And they sent part 2. So, let's get into it. I have the time to tell some more stories from my childhood, so I'll continue where I left off, with each story getting more strange and or creepy. The majority of these haven't been told to anyone outside of the family, as it makes most people I've met uncomfortable to talk about the paranormal and stories down the general line, so enjoy. Well, they found a nice warm home here because we love it. The 6th story. There have been plenty of beings that more than 2 of us in the household have seen. What we tend to call the Gray Man for context, right up the stairway to the 2nd story, there is a hallway that has a row of windows looking out to the backyard. The tin roof can be seen right outside the window where you can actually walk on it. Now this is where I have seen these featureless gray men. Best I can describe their looks is that of a green suit, but gray. I was probably 7 to 8 years old when I first encountered them. I'd gone down the hallway to go to my sister's room when I saw 2 of the featureless faces pressed up against the window with their hands sprawled behind them and their knees touching the tin roof. I screamed and darted into my sister's room, telling her what I had seen. By the time she got up to see what I had seen, they were gone. A few weeks later, she saw them outside of her window, crouched down by the window, staring in with their featureless faces. She took off out of her room and down to our parents' bedroom to let them know, and after this incident, others would see them all over the course of the next 2 years. I've seen them on multiple occasions, and they're always perched on the roof in various positions, facing towards the windows. They never make noise, just watch. Unnerving to say the least, but they stopped appearing by the time I was 10. 7th story. Only one of my sisters and I have seen this being. We have seen them once separately, and thankfully only once. I woke up one night with an eerie feeling, so I opened my eyes and looked around my room. It didn't take me but a second to notice a tall, featureless, orange-skinned being on the foot of my bed, hands on the footboard, and wearing what I can only describe as a pilgrim's-type outfit, white and black and that funny-looking hat. I was paralyzed with fear, and I couldn't scream. It stared at me for a minute and then knocked on the footboard before walking off to be a part of the bedroom that I could not see. I can't remember much from what happened after, but I ended up staying in my parents' room for the rest of that night and didn't sleep. I didn't tell anyone except my parents about what I saw, and a few years down the road, one of my sisters was telling me some of her experiences, and then she mentioned, an orange colonist woke me up one night. My jaw dropped, and then she knew right away by the look on my face that we had seen this entity, the same manner, years apart without knowing. 8th story. I was probably 10 or older when we started having activity in our attic. The attic is a large one where you can stand up in it and walk around. Up there we kept mainly bins and boxes of holiday items and gifts. Most stacking of bins were 5 or more. Keep this in mind. One night we were waking up past midnight. I can't remember what we were doing, but we were still active. As we went about our business, we heard a feminine voice scream from upstairs, but we were all accounted for on the main level. We all looked at each other like, we all heard that, right? And then we went to investigate. Of course, with baseball bats, golf clubs, and kitchen knives. Just to be on the safe side. We looked all around but found no one. Later on, once we finally started to feel better about sleeping, we heard some shifting coming from the attic. It sounded like furniture was being pushed around, and then there would be a bang and a thud as if bins were falling. We once again went to investigate, but before we made it to the attic door, we could still hear the shifting happening up the stairs, but found nothing disturbed. No boxes fell, nothing moved, and no people were to be made at the top. The noises had stopped once we opened that door. We checked thoroughly to make sure no one was hiding behind the ductwork or even the sleds. This wasn't the last time this would happen. 6 of us siblings were home one night around 8, I think. We were making pizza in the kitchen when we heard shuffling upstairs. It was much louder than before. We were scared to even look this time, and we genuinely thought someone or multiple people were upstairs. This went on for at least 30 minutes, if not an hour. The police were called, but it took them at least an hour to get there. We lived out in the middle of nowhere, and they came from the nearest town, which has a law to deal with calls within city limits before doing the ones in the countryside. Over the years, the police knew us very well, as there would be many more occurrences where we needed to make sure there were no people in the house. Now back to the story. The lady screaming we heard previously happened a few more times after that, spread throughout several years. All would happen late at night and woke us up a few. It's what I would call a banshee-type scream. Blood-curdling, but not a scared kind of scream. I can still hear it in my head, what that scream sounded like, but it's hard to put into better words. I'm glad I don't have to listen to her sound off another time. I heard it more than I would have liked. Anyway, that's all I have to say for tonight. I'll be sharing more of mine and my family's personal stories another time. Stay safe and protected, y'all. Those were so good. Please send more. I am obsessed. You encountered a banshee. 100% you encountered a banshee. Oh my god, that was so incredible. I loved that. But that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and listening to these stories, and I will see you tomorrow.